Well, I'd like to thank everyone for coming, as this is a women's roundtable. My role here is appropriately very brief, other than to say thank you all so much. 62 days to an election where we can elect not just the first woman governor, but a governor who's going to put Wisconsin back on track, get Wisconsin back to work, and make sure that we're hitting all the priorities that we really need to hit. Very briefly, I want to thank Representative Chris Sinicki for her attendance. I want to thank Representative LaTanya Johnson, who I believe is here as well. Marlene Ott, our Milwaukee County Party Chair, and I am terrified now that I forgot somebody, if so I apologize, but
me.
Oh, I'm sorry, Martha Love, DNC member. That's a horrible thing that I just did there, but let me just, one quick point, just so we all understand what's at stake. I'm going to let Congresswoman Moore and Congressman Wasserman Schultz talk more about the issues and what matters, but just in 2010, Tom Barrett won women by 1 percentage point in that election. Now, here's what I know. I know that if the election were held today, or if Mary Burke took the next 62 days off, she's going to win women by more than 1 percentage point. We need to win women by a lot. And there's a number of good reasons for that, but as you leave here today excited and energized, make sure that everywhere you go you're talking about the importance of getting out and voting for Mary Burke, as well as Sue Happ, our great nominee for Attorney General. With that, I'm going to introduce our great Congresswoman Gwen Moore, someone who doesn't just talk the talk, she walks the walk. She's out there every day, pounding the pavement. She's going to get reelected by a lot. She knows that. That doesn't stop her from working 1 minute harder, raising money for us, as well as making sure that she's taking Mary around the community, making sure that everybody that should get to know Mary does, that she's going to church services, that she's at the right events all over the city, and has really been, like she was for Tammy Baldwin, who's now in the U.S. Senate, really making sure that Mary is going to get across the line in Milwaukee. So with no further ado, happy to introduce our Congresswoman Gwen Moore.
Thank you, Mike. It's really great to be here, and I want to just welcome all of you all to the 4th Congressional District of Wisconsin. Real happy we've got our Waukesha County folk here. I mean, they're few, but I mean, they're a powerful lot. I mean, they are. Welcome to the 4th Congressional District of Wisconsin. I want to introduce Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and then we're going to kind of go around the room, and so that Debbie knows who's in the room before we have our conversation. Debbie Wasserman Schultz was a former Florida state legislator. She was the youngest state legislator in the Florida legislature before she came to Congress. Mother of 3. My classmate, we came in together in 2004, and she has been a force to reckon with. She has really built a network of folk who range from members of the Black Congressional Caucus, the Progressive Caucus, to the Blue Dogs and New Dems, really garnered the respect across the spectrum, and is feared and despised by Republicans. Debbie speaks truth to power, and so much so, I was telling folks earlier today that a good friend of mine, a lifelong friend of mine who lives in the D.C. area, says, we need to clone this woman. She's a member of the Appropriations Committee and has worked her will even in the minority, but someone who really has supported this president, beyond compare, and represented him very, very well as chairwoman of the DNC. She has been bipartisan. I was joking earlier today, and this is where we parted ways. She formed a baseball. An annual baseball game with members of Congress from both parties against the press corps, and they won this year. The legislators won.
Women members.
The women legislators won. Of course, I am not about to get out there playing a baseball, but I'm a good cheerleader. But just to show you how enthusiastic and how on it Debbie is, the first game that they had, she broke her leg. during the game playing. She's a baseball player. This is why I don't play people. I'm smart. And so we were screaming, Debbie, the ambulance is waiting. Come on, we gotta go. Let's carry her. Debbie said, no, I can't go. Come on, Debbie, come on, you're hurt. You gotta get to the hospital. People were frantic, and Debbie said, no. And so she grabbed the mic and said, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to thank our sponsors and our donors. I mean, she is a money-raising machine. I mean, this girl wakes up, thinks raising money, which is one of the reasons. And so not only is she a good spokesperson, you've seen her all on MSNBC, not only can she speak truth to power, but girlfriend here can show you the money. She can get that paper. She can talk you into donating. Some of the things that I need to learn. But she's one of my dearest, best friends on Capitol Hill. And she's the reappointed chairwoman of the DNC, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And so I'll start here with Marlene.
Perfect.
Introduce myself?
Yes.
Marlene Ott, retired teacher
And
chair of the Democratic Party.
see, women
in
don't.
Milwaukee County.
We don't toot our own horn. Come on.
Little minor detail there.
Joan Martinez, retired teacher. I work in the trenches with poll verification, and I also work with the Hispanic community in getting up the vote.
Yeah.
State Representative LaTanya Johnson. I represent the 17th Assembly District.
Kristen Hansen, I am the 5th Congressional District Representative to the State Board.
All right.
Latoya Sykes, I'm managing partner at Dampier and Kennedy and also a community advocate. So I'm happy to be here.
Donna Shepard, Chief of Staff, Senator Lena Taylor.
Heather Olsvik, Events Chair, working with Marlene on the Democratic Party of Milwaukee County, and I was happy to have you as my boss when I was the Credentials Manager on the convention.
Yes.
And get to staff you and your children at least once in Miami, working for the President. Happy to be here with both of you wonderful women and everyone at the table.
Great to see you. Thank you.
Mary O'Haron from Waukesha. I'm retired from the post office, a strong union advocate, and a volunteer in the Waukesha campaign office.
I'm Julianne Walsh. I'm a volunteer from Waukesha County. I'm a retired speech pathologist. I work with about 4 different groups, and we can do a lot better, and we will. So I'm honored to be here.
I'm Sierra Chester. I'm a recent law school grad, and I'm currently working with Wisconsin Progress.
I'm State Representative Chris Sinicki. I represent the 20th District, which is Southside Milwaukee, St. Francis, Cudahy Airport area. I'm going to apologize. I got a really packed calendar today. I need to leave here by right around 11 to get back to a meeting in the district. But I really wanted to be here to just talk about how we're going to get the women vote out.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Welcome. Raina Andrews, Community Relations Director from Milwaukee County Executive for Safeway.
Fantastic. I'm Ellen Gagnon, Community Organizer from Waukesha County.
I'm Kathy McIntyre, also long retired teacher, and I'm on the leadership team for the City of Waukesha's team.
I love all this Waukesha.
Yeah.
You know, they're ridiculous.
Diane Motorson, retired teacher, also from wonderful Waukesha County.
Great.
Turning it purple.
My name is Rachel Graham. I'm an attorney in Madison, Wisconsin, and I'm here as a guest of the Voter Expansion Project.
Oh, wow.
I'm Lillian Cheeseman. I am running the Voter Expansion Project for Wisconsin, so I'm very excited to be doing that. And I'm from Milwaukee, but I'm living in Madison, so you'll see me everywhere.
Debbie, you're her boss too, actually.
Yeah. I seem to have about 5 bosses that I've counted.
Team effort.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. It's a little confusing sometimes, but I'm really excited about the program that we're building this year. And if anybody wants to volunteer, please see me after.
Hi, my name is Arvina Martin. I'm from Madison. I'm an enrolled member of the Ho-Chunk Nation, and I serve as the Ho-Chunk Nation Legislature's Chief Communications Officer, and I'm also the chair of the American Indian Caucus for the Democratic Party.
Right.
Yes, and thank you for having me.
My name is Martha Love, and I'm on the Democratic National Committee, and also I'm one of the founding members of the Human Trafficking Task Force in Milwaukee County, state of Wisconsin.
Yes.
Dana Worrell Patterson, chairperson of the Human Trafficking Task Force of Greater Milwaukee. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you all so much for being here. I want to thank my colleague and friend. I said this earlier. we throw around the term friend in politics quite a bit, and best friend maybe a little bit more sparingly, but when Gwen and I talk about how we have forged a very personal bond of friendship, we really mean it. It's not just a throwaway line. You do fight side by side and get to know your colleagues who you were elected with in your class, and the legislators here know that because you end up spending the most time together. But more than that, Gwen and I have both been through personal health challenges. We've shared those experiences together. We sit on the same row. Members in the House chamber sort of gather. We don't have our assigned seats like in legislatures, but there are members that congregate in around the same place. And Gwen and I kind of sit in the same area and commiserate. And the finest compliment that I can pay to anyone is friend. Friendship means a great deal to me. Loyalty. There's no one more fiercely loyal to the people that she represents than Gwen Moore. If you've got to go into a firefight, you want to be going in that foxhole with Gwen Moore, because there is no one that will fight more fiercely, no more passionate advocate, no one who will stand up and say what needs to be said, who will speak the truth to power, who will be the voice for the voiceless, and who has fought on the issues and brought issues that would never make the national agenda to the top of the national agenda. And so, but for her service, there are so many things that would not have been addressed because of the experience that Gwen Moore brought to the table and the respect that she's had. So I'm so proud to be here with her yet again, and to be here with all of you. And Mike Tate continues to do a fantastic job as the Wisconsin State Party Chair. Again, he and I are both gluttons for punishment in taking on the role after an election cycle and continuing. But there is so much left for us to do, and I think we both recognized that while we were proud of our accomplishments, we had a lot of work left undone, and we needed to look forward and not just think about the election cycle right in front of us, but to think about election cycles to come. And given that Mike is our youngest state party chair, and I'm still relatively young comparatively in my
National chairwoman.
Yes. So still relatively young, certainly compared to previous chairs. We know that the other side is playing for keeps, and what's at stake for women in this election and in elections to come, particularly if you're a mom, a wife, a sister, a daughter, a granddaughter. What matters for the women in America, for the women in our lives, is so personal. Because just look at what's going on, and you have only to look in this state to see what having a right-wing Tea Party extremist governor means for the quality of life of women. Someone who has no regard for their quality of life, who actually has what I would say is disdain and disrespect. And the evidence that I would hold up is that, it's one thing to have Republicans who oppose equal pay for equal work. That's mind-boggling in and of itself. But then to take the extra step of actually repealing the enforcement mechanism to ensure that women in Wisconsin get equal pay for equal work, instead, I know I ran for office, Gwen ran for office, the women who are elected around this table and the women involved in the political process around this table, we all are involved in this process to make the world better, to help give people a hand up, to pull another woman up behind us on the rung of the ladder that we've just left, and to lift as we climb. And Scott Walker has given women the back of his hand. Mm-hmm. And there is no, I know that is stark, I know that is direct, but that is reality. When you have women earning 78 cents in Wisconsin for every dollar a man earns, and a governor who has actually signed a law that repealed that enforcement mechanism, that is just unacceptable, and it should be motivation enough for women across this state. I mean, Mike is absolutely right. Mary Burke is certainly going to win the women's vote by more than a point, but we have to make sure through our voter expansion project, through Lillian's involvement, and Lillian is the voter expansion director, that is a joint project in Wisconsin with the DNC's resources as well as the state party's resources, and we are focused, I'll talk about the voter expansion project in a moment, but we are focused on making sure that our voters turn out, that they understand what's at stake in this election. And let's look at more nationally what women believe about the Republicans' policies. Because the Republicans themselves did a poll just about a week ago that leaked out that demonstrated exactly how women feel about Republican policies. The poll showed that women thought Republicans were intolerant, that they were lacking in compassion, and that they were stuck in the past, just to give you a snapshot. This is what women voters polled nationally said about Republicans in general. That same poll showed that women cited equal pay as the policy that would help them the most. So when you ask women what is the biggest obstacle to their success and what would help lift them up and give them more of a shot at being able to take care of their families, make sure that they can raise their kids, get them the best possible education so that they can succeed in the path they choose in life, they say that the biggest obstacle is equal pay. Because if you look at what women lose over the course of their professional lives by having unequal pay, let's say that the national average is 77 cents for every dollar a man earns. The average woman loses, over the course of her professional life, $430,000. You know what? That's real money, no matter where you are. That's a mortgage. Way more depending on where you are, it's several mortgages. It's several kids' college tuition. It's making sure that you can live $430,000 over the professional life of a woman who earns 77 cents for every dollar a man earns. And so what that means is that it is a barrier and an obstacle to a woman who just wants to be able to help climb and claw her way with her family to the middle class. Because we know that that's everyone's goal. Just being able to make a better way of life for you and your family. Every woman I know, I have twin 15-year-olds and an 11-year-old. And there is nothing that matters to my husband and I more than making sure everything we do in our lives is done through the lens of being their parent and making sure that our commitment results in making sure that when they grow up, they have a better life than we did. Or at least as good. At least as good. So instead, what Republican Tea Party extremists like Scott Walker are doing is they're grabbing us by the hair and pulling us back. And it's unacceptable. And it's not going to happen on our watch. That's right. Not as the women of Wisconsin, not as Democrats, and it's the reason that I'm crisscrossing this country and making sure that we do everything we can to keep the focus on what matters to voters, on creating jobs, on getting this economy turned around, on fighting to increase the minimum wage. Who doesn't think that women in this country deserve a 40% raise if you're a minimum wage earner? That's what Scott Walker opposes, saying it's a job killer. Well, there's no study that's been done that shows that when we've increased the federal minimum wage, that it's killed jobs. On the contrary, it's actually created jobs. It's created more opportunities. And we know, just think logically. If you think about what it does for a family who has more money in their pocket, who are already minimum wage earners, these are not people who are going to invest that windfall in the increase in the minimum wage on the stock market. They're not sitting on that money for a rainy day. They're putting it right back. They're going to buy a refrigerator because theirs is on the blink. Or they're going to make sure that they can buy the school supplies that they've had to go and stand online to get donated for their kids instead. That's the reality for too many people on the minimum wage. Because what minimum wage means today is poverty for too many people. Can you imagine working a 40-hour week and also still needing to to feed your family, needing food stamps? That is the life that the Scott Walkers of this country are condemning families to, and it's unacceptable. Investing in infrastructure so we can create jobs. And in a state like Wisconsin, which has an aging infrastructure, aging roads, crumbling bridges, we know that if we invest in building up that infrastructure, it creates jobs, and it also makes sure that we can get people to and fro where they're going safely. That matters. That's what government's role is, to make sure we can keep people safe, make sure that they can actually have what they need to be able to provide for their families. What Republicans think the government is for is more cutbacks on education, making sure that we can make it harder for women to be able to get the health care that they need. The Hobby Lobby decision shows us that. Focusing on trying to make sure that we can dictate to women, what they do with their bodies. These are the issues that reach the top of the national agenda for Republicans. And at the same time, trying to repeal the Affordable Care Act more than 50 times. And Scott, really, I mean, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Why we want to elect insane people to govern us is beyond me. I think the women of Wisconsin will say we've had enough, that we have buyer's remorse, that we need to make sure that we have a governor who is going to fight for women, not reject federal funding, and leave 84,000 Wisconsinites without access to health care, even when it's 100% paid for by the federal government. So now I want to talk tactics. Let's talk turkey here, okay? Yeah. Because what Lillian's role is with the... Oh, I'm good, thank you. What Lillian, I'm on a roll.
You're talking too much, and my mouth would be like...
No, it's okay. Thank you. What Lillian's role is, through the voter expansion project at the DNC, which we launched in February with Vice President Biden and President Clinton's help, is to make sure that everyone in Wisconsin knows the rules of the road. Because we know the intense voter suppression efforts that Scott Walker and his cronies have attempted. They've cut back on early voting days. They've attempted to try to impose photo ID in order to cast a ballot, which, by the way, is nothing short of a poll tax. I mean, there's no way around it, and it specifically targets women. Women don't often realize that voter ID makes it tougher for women to vote, because raise your hand if your voter registration, if your name on your voter registration is different than your name on your driver's license. It's different on mine. Different on mine.
I never.
Yes, because so often women have their married name on one and their maiden name on the other, because they registered to vote long before they got married. So it's really critical that we make sure that women understand what's at stake. Right, that's why we do these women's roundtables, because we want the leaders to understand what's at stake for women so you can communicate. And so IWillVote.com is a website we launched with our voter expansion project to make sure that in all 50 states that everybody can go on that website and know the rules of the road, that you can understand what you need to bring to the polls, help people get registered, make sure once they're registered that they turn out to vote, and then make sure that we fight to get their vote accurately counted. And we also wanted to make sure that language wasn't a barrier, so we launched voyavotar2014.com, which is the Spanish language version of that website, so that no matter what the barrier, you have a one-stop shop that is launched by the DNC that you can get all the information for your state, even down to your precinct and your precinct address. So lastly, I want to make sure that we focus on turnout, because we all watched the nightmare that was 2010. We've seen that movie. Never want to see that ending again, right? We want to make sure that in the 2014 midterm that women make the difference, just like we made the difference for Barack Obama in 2008 and in 2012. We can make sure that Mary Burke is elected governor of the state of Wisconsin on the shoulders of Wisconsin's women. We can do it. And none of us want to wake up on November 5th saying shoulda, woulda, coulda. None of us want to wake up on November 5th saying, if only I had knocked on one more door. No one wants to wake up and say, I should have made 10 more phone calls. The road is littered with losses of candidates who, but for a handful more calls, we could have brought them across the finish line. So for our children, for education, for health care, for making sure that what women care about the most, which is fighting, kicking, scratching, and clawing to make a better way of life, not for us, because it's never about us for women. It's always about everyone else in our lives that we care about. And that's why we're all here, and that's why we're going to get this done for Mary Burke, and we're going to make sure that 2014 is the beginning of making sure that everyone in America has an opportunity to succeed, not just the people who are already successful. So on to victory. Thank you so much. Shout out to our DNC member, Martha Love, as well.
Now, Krista Nicky has got to leave us, and she represents a very important constituency. So I'm going to arrogate to myself the right to just sort of call on her to make some comments so that she can be part of the, at least her thoughts can be part of the conversation we have.
Okay, it kind of caught me off guard, so just bear with me here.
Unaccustomed as you are.
I've borne with you for a while.
I know.
Think she's pretty confident you can do it.
I'll never forget when I was first running for the legislature. Gwen took me under her, and she was like taking me all around. This is the new Rosemary Potter, she would tell me. This is my friend, the new Rosemary Potter. But anyhow, and I thank you for that. Do I have to call you Debbie?
Please call me Debbie.
You're inspiring to sit across the table. I met you on several occasions, heard you speak, and you are just, I wish we could like clone you and have you at everybody's door in the state of Wisconsin.
Right.
Because
Thank
if we had.
Well, you're all my surrogates.
Yeah, more of you, we wouldn't have a thing to worry about. And listening to you talk about, so passionately about equal pay, the Equal Pay Enforcement Act here in Wisconsin. And I'm sure Gwen, because Gwen and I, she was in the Senate when I came into the Assembly, and that was one of the first issues. I worked on that bill for 14 years, and finally got it signed into law, and sat back, not being able to do anything as Glenn Grothman and Scott Walker, moved to repeal that protection for women in the state. Yeah, so it almost brought me to tears to hear you talk so passionately about it. I feel really good about this upcoming election. I've seen so much activity, but we need more activity. I believe that what we need to get to is, and I know the coordinated campaigns around the state are working on this, is we need to get to those voters who don't normally vote in the midterms.
Right.
I think that's our key.
And they need to know that they can register all the way up to, and on election day.
Yes, on election day. And when you look back at the numbers from 2012, I'm going to put this out there. I truly believe if the recall election had been held at the regular November election, we would not have a Governor Walker right now. Right. But, as you all know, that kind of got taken out of our hands by other folks, and, it didn't work out that way. But where was I going with that? Okay, so if you look at the numbers from 2012, there's 200,000 more Democratic votes out there than Republican votes in the state of Wisconsin. We need to get to those 200,000 people.
Exactly.
And drag them to the polls if we have to. Because I don't know if I can take another session in the legislature.
You know what,
Governor
Representative, let me just actually correct you, because we actually don't need the 200,000. We'd love them to vote, all to vote.
Yeah.
What we need is the same proportion of, okay. Chris and Debbie. We need the same proportion of voters that voted in 2012 here in Wisconsin to vote in 2014.
Yes.
And that's what we did in Virginia. And that's why Terry McAuliffe is governor of the state of Virginia today, because a year later, a year after the 2012 election in Virginia, when everyone said there's no way that we would be able to repeat the Obama coalition and get that same proportion of voters to the polls, we did it. We did it with our ground game, we did it with our digital and technological advantage, and we married that in our voter expansion project so that we can make sure that we can micro-target who needs to be registered, go get them registered, get them turned out to vote. That's what we're doing with the state party very effectively. And we are pushing our tool. The advantage that we have now is that we've built these tools and this grassroots network over a decade. And now we have the opportunity, and we are pushing it down into individual campaigns and into the state parties to make sure that they can use those resources effectively on the ground to win races. And that's what's absolutely critical.
Yes, and I agree with you 100%. I just want to finish up by saying so somebody else has a chance. I could talk about this forever. I was thinking, after the recall, talking to people, just on the street or in the store, they would say to me, I don't like Scott Walker. I don't like what he's done, but I don't believe in recalls. I think he should be allowed to finish off his term. That's the other group we have to make sure gets out there and votes. And this is winnable. This is so winnable for us. I truly, honestly believe it. And we just
now a poll shows it's winnable.
The polls show it's winnable, and we just need to make sure every able-bodied person gets to the polls, and every able-bodied person that is willing to help gets out there and knocks on doors, makes those phone calls, and just, drags people to the polls.
Exactly.
And we can do it. I'm positive we can. I'm done. I'm done with my soapbox.
I know. Once you get on, it's hard to get off. What else is on your mind?
Well, just let me say a couple of things. And I think you're absolutely right. And a friend of mine said we should clone Debbie and put her at every door, but we can't. And that's why. So it's no accident that we invited Debbie out here. We might not have invited her out here if she had been a male DNC chair, because I do think that when you're 62 days out, you really do have to drill down into your base and set some priorities for what you're going to do. All the issues that she talked about today are women's issues. And family issues. And I think that those are the voters that we have. When we lost in 2010, it's because we had a drop-off of women. It doesn't matter that Mary Burke is probably more than likely going to get more women voters than Scott Walker. It doesn't matter if 40,000 women just stay home, and don't vote at all. I think it's extremely important to drill down and to make sure that we target women voters, because they have the most at stake in this election. They have more to lose than anyone else by staying the course. And that's why it's important for us to figure out what the message is. We might not get but 2 minutes on a telephone call with a woman or a minute at a door to be able to say, girlfriend, it's more than just about whether or not you can have an abortion or birth control, although he has shown us that he has contempt for that. I mean, but what governor cuts $800 million out of education, gives it, women care about education. What governor turns away the Medicaid money costing us $270 million or $200 million and 5,000 jobs? Women are the stewards of health care. You got to realize who you're talking to. You're talking to the person who does the grocery, makes the grocery list, chooses the school district that's going to get their kids the best education. These are issues that women care about the most. And carry that conversation beyond birth control, although we've threatened Planned Parenthood clinics closed down. Yes, girlfriend. We can disagree about whether or not a woman should get an abortion, but birth control? Are we still debating that? And so I think we could get women, and this is why we have gathered you all together, because I think that this is the best tactical move for us to make, is to make sure that we work on women. Because if you get women, you'll get the other people in the household to vote as well. Exactly. And there are more women voters than there are men voters, period.
I have a question for, Debbie and Lillian, actually, and anybody else who wants to answer. One of the things that's scaring me to death about voter registration is
the new residency requirements we have in Wisconsin. Joey, you can probably speak to this. I've heard horror stories about volunteers going door to door to try to register voters or even update their addresses, and people don't have the stringent new residency requirements even before the election, let alone on day of for registration. What are we doing to try to fix that?
Right. So what happened was it used to be that if you registered to vote, I think it was more than 3 weeks before the election day, you didn't have to bring your proof of residence. You didn't have to have your updated driver's license, or you didn't have to have the utility bill. And so that allowed us to have voter registration drives where people could be out there in the community, and you could do it on your own time schedule, and you could register to vote. What Scott Walker and the Republicans in our state legislature have done is to make it so that you always have to have your proof of residence, no matter when you register to vote. And so that's the problem that I think our people are facing. That means that we can't have the same kinds of voter registration drives that we used to. So the only way we can fix that I know of is to educate people about what documents they need to in order to prove their residence, and then to get Mary Burke elected so that we can stop the continuing limitation of our voting access. Because we used to have longer early voting.
Yeah.
We used to have early voting on weekends. Early voting on weekends was eliminated for no better reason than smaller communities in outstate Wisconsin didn't choose to hold it and didn't like that Milwaukee chose to hold it.
Even though Milwaukee has all kinds of more people than that.
Right. We had 37,000 people who took advantage of early voting during the 2012 election. 37,000 people in Milwaukee. So many of those. I did observation on the weekend early voting, and there were lines that were 2 hours. But you know what? On a weekend, on a Saturday, people could chill out in line and wait to vote. That was fine, or if they didn't want to, they knew that they could come back the next day when maybe the line would be shorter. It was amazing, and for them to get rid of it for no... It's not like it cost the state anything to have weekend voting. That was something that the City of Milwaukee Election Commission took on. That was a cost that we took on locally. It was not a cost-saving measure. It was just to limit the amount of time we have available to vote. And that impacts working moms most because I remember my mom barely got home before 9 p.m. sometimes. She didn't have time to early vote. Not that it was available back then, but she wouldn't have had time to early vote during the work week. If she was going to do that, she would have had to do it on the weekend. Well, that's not an option for our people this year. So the only thing we can do is to stop this erosion.
Two important things, though. That's why we launched our iwillvote.com website. So that when you have states like Wisconsin, which more than 40 states, led by Republicans for the most part, actually created obstacles to make it harder for certain kinds of groups to go to the polls and vote. And, of course, that's because Republicans know that they can't win these elections on the merits, so they have to try to rig the outcome. And they've bragged. They've had their leaders brag publicly about how if they're going to have a better chance during a midterm election because fewer people vote. I mean, imagine rooting for less democracy. Imagine rooting for fewer people to turn out. I mean, the Founding Fathers must be turning over in their graves. But we launched iwillvote.com, and I would encourage each of you. It's actually downloadable on your mobile device. You can share it with your networks. This is a room full of leaders. So you each have each of you is here because you represent a large network that we encourage you to push out because of the obstacles that Scott Walker and the Republicans in the legislature threw in the path of our voters. Let them know about iwillvote.com. And then we also have a tool that we've made available to the state party, to Mary's campaign, that allows us to go in and use our grassroots network to identify precincts down to the block where there are eligible voters that should be registered that aren't, and then we can go to them. We can talk to them about registering to vote, get the documents, help let them know what documents they need, and make sure we can get them registered. So we are able to micro-target our registration in areas where we know if we get more folks registered, they're going to make a difference in the outcome of an election. And so that's tactically what we have to do now, and it's a significant part of our voter expansion project, and it's very, very critical. That's what we need you all to be engaged in, and also with voyavotar.bentacatorce.com as well, because we want to make sure that Hispanics in the state and across the country, who are also a group of voters that is a little bit harder, less likely to have a photo ID, less likely to have the information that they need to be able to go to the polls and vote. We want to make sure they have the information as well.
Time for one more question, and then people need to hit the order.
I was just going to say, I've done the SRD training, and what we can
The what
do
training?
this year, SRD for special
Oh, okay,
registration
good.
deputy, we can still help them fill out the form. And if they don't have the information with them in Milwaukee, they can take that form and the information they need to the libraries, which I think is a tremendous help. Too.
Right, and that is a help.
We need to make sure that we follow up on the suggestions that she's making, and that everybody here share information with each other so that we can get the app and learn how to use it and learn how to coordinate
because
it.
you have same-day registration.
Right,
because you can
right,
do it all the
right.
way to election day.
We need to.
Chairwoman, we can share those links on our Facebook page
Yes,
as well.
iwillvote.com.
And I know that I bet everyone at this table is somebody that their friends, especially their sisterhood friends, come to say, who should I vote
That's
for,
right.
or when can I start voting. So I think that
Exactly.
those links are things
Very
that you can
important.
start to send out ahead of time. And it's the network of sisterhoods. You know, this is not just, it's wonderful that we have women from Waukesha and across the county and reaching out to our friends across the state and hopefully giving them as much of a chance to meet Mary Burke in person.
Yeah.
We really thank our Congresswoman.
And Susan Happ,
Yes.
the state attorney general, I mean, who will protect our reproductive freedoms and so on. I mean, they can't beat women this time.
No.
We got
And that
Thank
website-
you all so much. I'm sorry.
That website really needs to be given out to voters when we go door to door, because the other obstacle we have in Wisconsin is the redistricting. And there are people who haven't voted since the presidential election.
Mhm.
I was at the vote for the primary. There were at least 6 people who were at the wrong district. Some of them lived within a block or 2.
And iwillvote.com, they can actually see
need to know
where
that.
they personally need to go to vote. Their own precinct.
That's awesome.
So
Thank
how
you all
do you
so
put
much.
this app on your phone? You just
It's a link.
Okay.
Well, you can download the app. It's iwillvote.com. You can download it right on your phone. There's a link. There's a link to it. You can post it on your Facebook pages. You can share it with your network via email. I mean, there's right on the website. It gives you all the tools to be able to do that
okay.
on both websites.
Let's give a round of applause to
Thank you all so much. Thank you. And to Gwen Moore. Thank you. Women are going to get this done.
And thanks to everyone for coming. We appreciate you.
This is, I'm sorry. One question I'm asking everybody since the election where we could have changed the Supreme Court to Wisconsin.
Yep, and we didn't.
Yeah.
In a democracy, what good is the right to vote if you don't lose an election? And what is this?
I'm concerned that
No question. That's why we're so focused on voter expansion at the DNC. We feel like that is one of the most significant things we can do as a national party. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.
We hope you'll all join us this Sunday with Gwen Moore supporting Mary Burke. It's one of the lowest dollar amount.
Big a scalp would Scott Walker be, and is this now a major race and project for the Democrats to oust him?
This is definitely a major race. Mary Burke is up in the polls among the most important voters, likely voters, the ones that in a poll say they are going to vote on Election Day. And she has run a campaign from beginning to now that is exactly on track to make sure that she's elected governor. A slow rolling boil that eventually will reach a crescendo that will send her to the governor's office. And that's because the issues that matter the most to voters in Wisconsin focus on job creation. Scott Walker promised to create 250,000 jobs and has fallen far short, is actually back of the pack, near the back of the pack in job creation across the compared to governors across the country. Mired in continued scandal. He's actually repealed the law that allows women to make sure that they can get equal pay for equal work. I mean, the disrespect and the disdain and the disregard that he has shown for Wisconsinites who simply want to climb the ladders to the middle class and make a better way of life for their families is really unprecedented, and I think that's showing in the polls now.
And Congresswoman Moore, are you surprised about the campaign that Burke has waged and that she is either so close or maybe a bit ahead?
I am not at all surprised. Scott Walker has demonstrated that he can't beat a woman. Just let me say that, it was one thing when he disregarded the rights of working people, but he went on to disrespect everyone else after that. He has no regard for women's pay equity, women's health care. We have deficits. He's been a bad CEO of the state. We have a deficit in everything from the transportation fund, the education fund, to the Veterans Trust Fund. He's been a bad manager of the state, all in favor of transferring this wealth to his cronies in the corporate world. And I think people have seen this bad management in his inability to create even a portion of the 250,000 jobs, turning away federal funds, creating deficits in our healthcare system, and I think that people want to see a change, and they see a great deal of hope in Mary Burke, who has really come from the business world, and it shows the kind of compassion for everyday people that this state is crying for.
I just want to shift gears here. Paul Ryan very critical of the ISIS situation as far as President Obama and his position. As far as what the president has been doing, did you hear his remarks yesterday?
I did not hear his remarks, but people are critical of everything that the president does. They're critical of his tan suit. I do think that you have to consider the source. I think that this president is very strategic and has provided a great deal of leadership in this international rogue state, and I stand with him.
President Obama has demonstrated that he is relentless when pursuing terrorists who have done harm to our people. Just ask the family members of Osama bin Laden. What he's doing now is making sure that we can build a coalition of our allies so that we can go after ISIS and do it in a way that is the most effective and efficient. And the track record that exists in making a decision to go after terrorists like that by ourselves is not a good one. From previous presidents, President Obama understands that in the world that we live in today, fighting a terrorist organization with the global reach and who have shown the propensity for depravity that this terrorist organization has requires a very strategic focus and an alliance of nations to go after them together.
So,
Thank you guys.
Thank you very much.